How you doing, Paul?
Good. Okay, I'm recording on my end too, guys.
Very good.
Okay, it's good to be here today. Um, okay, Arthur, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, this is Paul and AJ's Ex Mormon files. I'm the Latter-day Saint. Paul's the Ex Mormon, and we have a guest, the Wyoming apologist. What's your name there, Wyoming?
Ellicks Green.
Very good. And he's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And today is the subject of the temple. And is that agreed there, Paul?
Yeah, let me just take something off just a second.
All
Take
right.
my headphones audio off. There we go. We'll see if I can hear you guys better now. Go ahead and talk.
Is that okay with you, Paul?
Yes. Can you guys hear? Yeah,
Yeah.
speak. Okay, there we go. I can hear you much better.
Oh, good, good.
And what was the topic again?
About the temple. Is that what we agreed upon?
Yeah, that sounds great with me.
Okay. So anyway, I don't want to start it off. I want to wait and we get into this. Who do you want? It's up to you, Paul. If you want Ellicks to chime in on why he thinks the temple is important, is biblically has a biblical foundation for its existence, or do you want say why?
Yeah, so Alex can go ahead and introduce himself first if he
Yeah,
wants to.
absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess to kind of introduce myself, I'm Ellicks Green. I'm the Wyoming apologist. AJ here invited me on to participate in this debate. Um, I guess that's kind of it for like my introduction.
Okay, sounds good. Uh, yeah, and if anybody doesn't know who I am, I'll give you a short synopsis as well. Again, I'm the founder and website developer of Daily Christian Devotionals, that's dailycdev.com, and Christianity versus Mormonism, which is christvm.com. Um, if you were to go there today, you'll see that there are some new updates. The menus are now gone at the top, and now they're just icons. Looks much more professional, modern. Worked on it a lot today. So didn't really prepare for this much, but as you guys know, I already have a pretty hard stance against the temples, LDS temples. So I will just allow the Holy Spirit to be my guide when it comes to these kinds of discussions. As for me, I know that the Lord is better speaking than I am, so I would rather have the Lord speak through me than allow my feeble voice to speak when it comes to these matters of importance of salvation. So go ahead, Arthur. Do you want to give a little introduction as well?
Yeah, sure. I'm AJ Hill. With me and Paul have created this YouTube channel called Paul and AJ's Ex Mormon Files again, and then I have another YouTube channel called The Latter Day Saint on Fire, and so I'm basically a Latter Day Saint who's very much loves the temple and sees it as a viable uh, place in the world today. And I'm here to have that discussion or debate with Paul, and maybe I'll disagree with Ellicks too, the Wyoming apologist, and I'll get after him too.
Probably not.
Very good. So, Paul, are we ready to go? You want Ellicks to start on his opening, or?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead, Alex. If you want to open it up, you're welcome to it.
Of course. So my opening, I'd like to pull up two scriptures. So the first one is Isaiah chapter 2, verses 2 through 4. It says, And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. So, a few things I'd like to point out in here is it talks about, first off, it says in the last days, which I think we all can agree here that that's talking about our time right now. And it says that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established at the top of the mountains. In the scriptures, most notably the Old Testament, the temple is often, I guess the mountain is usually used as a metaphor for the temple, because Moses would go up to Mount Sinai to talk face to face with the Lord throughout the book of Exodus. It's also the same with Abraham. Abraham was often commanded to go up onto the mountains to do sacrifices or to speak with the Lord. So in these scriptures, Isaiah is talking about the mountain of the Lord's house being established. And in this one, he's talking about the Salt Lake Temple. It's the Lord's house in the top of the mountains. And and a lot of people could say that like the Lord's house could mean like a church of some kind. Well, church buildings are nice. They do have their purpose as a place that people can gather. They're not the Lord's house. They never have been called the Lord's house in the scriptures. And especially in the Latter-day Saints, like during the dedications of each, I've been to a dedication for both temples and for meeting houses. The temple is dedicated to the Lord as his house, and the meeting house is actually dedicated to the Lord's work. So that's also a key difference there. The next one I'd like to turn to is in the book of Revelations. It'd be Revelations chapter 20. If we all want to go there. So in Revelations 20, it talks about, of course, the last days again. It talks about also the priests that stand before God. And something that you mentioned before, Paul, is that, with priests, you said that priests work in the temple, which in the Old Testament, that is correct. They worked in the tabernacle and then later the temple of Solomon. In this case, there will be temples on the earth, and there will be people that will be needing to work in them. So, yeah, so that's basically my opening arguments. So yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Did you want to have an open?
Yeah, let me talk about that for a minute. Isaiah chapter 2 simply means the coming temple of Solomon that's being built. That's all that's talking about. If you look at all the commentaries on Isaiah chapter 2, that's all that means. It has nothing to do with a temple by the LDS Church.
It says in the last days, though.
Yeah, look at Hebrews chapter 1. When it comes to the time that they're living into in Hebrews chapter 1, it also refers to them living in the last days too, but that was 2,000 years ago, right? So if you look at Isaiah, that was 600 years before Christ, and it's talking about a later time, which would be, according to Isaiah, the last days as well. So let's look at Hebrews chapter 1. It says, God, who at sundry times and diverse manners spake in times past unto the fathers by way of the prophets, hath in these last days, speaking of the times they're living in, spoken unto us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds. So we got to be careful that we're not making huge assumptions when it comes to temples in our day compared to a time that could very well have been back in that time right after Isaiah was prophesying this.
Okay.
Okay, so, and again, the only time we ever hear about priests and being ministers on earth when it comes to the New Covenant or New Testament church, it's always in regards to the millennial reign of Christ. It doesn't happen before that, and nobody is holding any priesthood. We only hear that when it comes to when Christ is ruling and reigning on the earth at that time. Do we hear that there are priests? Now, if you were to look at Revelation 20, we should see what's happening during this millennial reign. It's something that we shouldn't be just stating things about temples on earth and all that stuff. For we know that Jesus will be on the earth. He will be ruling and reigning. It's not until in Revelation 21 where his tabernacle will come down from heaven. And that's a discrepancy in your church as well, where you believe that you will build the New Jerusalem. Where in Revelation 21, it states that it will come down as a bride adorned for us. Coming down from heaven, already pre-built for us. So it won't be built in Missouri, which is a Temple Mount. This is all about temples because it's talking about Temple Mount in Missouri, where in Revelation 21, it's coming down. Let me read that for you. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. I know that you guys have heard the doctrine about that in the last days we'll be building this New Jerusalem in your church. Is this a correct statement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you disagree then with Revelation chapter 21. Is that correct?
Only the interpretation.
How is it a bad interpretation?
Well,
even if you keep reading
I'll let
21,
Alex chime in.
it describes in detail every ounce of the building, every which way, every part of the wall, what's inscribed on the walls, and it's already coming down. Why would you need to build something that God has already have pre-built and already coming? If it's coming down from heaven, how would it be built by men on earth?
Yeah, I was okay, Paul. I'll apologize. I just want to do this real quick for everybody. So, whenever somebody's making a statement, let them finish, and let's not try to interject while they're doing it until later on in the conversation, so we get a fullness of what they're trying to say. And the other thing is, I wasn't prepared for that question. I was thinking that I was going to make a statement first and then come in, and then we could ask questions. But Ellicks, if you're ready for that question he just asked, I appreciate if you would chime in. If you could, and what And we were in Revelation.
Revelation 21, you can read it in starting in verse 1, how the New Jerusalem is already pre-built and comes down from heaven, and then until it lands upon the earth.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes. So I mean, part of New Jerusalem will be the city of Enoch. You know, the city that was taken up into heaven by God. Um, but also, yes, we do believe that New Jerusalem will come down from heaven. But but it never says anywhere that there won't be temples already on the earth. Never says that. And that's one of those things that, you know, there will be a temple in New Jerusalem as well. We know that there will probably be more temples built other places other than just New Jerusalem as well, on other parts of the earth during the millennium. And but with Missouri especially, um, there's not in Independence especially, and where New Jerusalem's going to come down. There really aren't any mountains, at least not compared to the Rocky Mountains that I have in my home state and in Utah. So that's kind of my thing.
Oh, so I would I would gather to say that because I am a freak of nature here, that I believe that there's duality in all things. Like I say, there's an evolution just much as I say there's a creation. What Ellicks said, it didn't even register. Didn't I didn't have a thought on that until I would say, yeah, there could be temples on the earth as well as a temple that comes from heaven and is on becomes established on the earth. I don't see a problem with both those scenarios happening. So that's my opinion on that particular verse.
So you both agree now that New Jerusalem will not be built?
Will there be a place to prepare for it? Yeah.
But will that city be built?
It'll come down from heaven.
Okay, so let me read what Joseph Smith wrote. This is Doctrine and Covenants. This is in Doctrine and Covenants, chapter 84, verse 2 and 4, and this is Doctrine and Scripture in the LDS Church. This is how it reads. A revelation of Jesus Christ unto his servants Joseph Smith Jr. and 6 elders as they united their hearts and lifted their voices on high. Yea, the word of the Lord concerning his church, established in the last days for the restoration of his people, as he has spoken by the mouth of his prophets, and for the gathering of his saints, to stand upon Mount Zion, which shall be the city of New Jerusalem, which city, and I'll quote, shall be built beginning at the temple lot. So you both have this wrong. Even your church agrees that the New Jerusalem will be built. It will not come down from heaven. This is one of Joseph's false prophecies, for it goes against Revelation 21. Let me continue. Shall be built beginning at the temple lot, which is appointed by the finger of the Lord in the western boundaries of the state of Missouri. And this is another false prophecy in your scripture. And dedicated by the hand of Joseph Smith Jr. He's already dead, and that temple was never dedicated by him. So you got to think about that. 2 false prophecies about a temple being built there, dedicated by him, and New Jerusalem being built by men and not coming down from heaven. And then it continues. And others with whom the Lord was well pleased. Verily, this is the word of the Lord. Word of the Lord means a prophecy from God. This is something not from man, but from God. Okay? That the city New Jerusalem shall be built by the gathering of the saints, beginning at this place, even the place of the temple, which temple shall be reared in this generation? So that generation's past. There's no temple in that location in Missouri. And New Jerusalem will not be built by man. It will come down from heaven.
Okay, so
Paul,
Paul,
response on that.
Can I chime in real quick? Is it possible that our understanding of that chapter is wrong? Where Joseph Smith still exists, whether you want to put him in hell or not, Paul, he still exists.
Is he alive?
I said Joseph Smith still exists. Whether you want to put him in hell or not, he still exists.
Will
Let's
he
say that he
dedicate that temple being dead?
hold on, let me finish. So is it possible that he himself will be the one who dedicates the second most important temple? It's possible that he could come down as a resurrected being and dedicate that temple. He still has that chance. He still, and when we talk about saints of that generation, they still exist in the eternal realm, and they could be a part of the building of that temple in a, not in a physical way, but in a spiritual way. So we could, I'm not saying that you're not correct, Paul, that maybe this was a prophecy. And if it's a false prophecy, it should have never been put in the Doctrine and Covenants. And I don't think that Doctrine and Covenants was put together with that one specifically in it at the time when Joseph Smith was still around. And I know it says the Lord says, but again, we give the Bible leniency when it comes to its canonization. We allow them to say certain things and say, well, it's because they didn't understand at that time what was going on. Because the last days, or what they were referring to the last days in the Bible of being that Jesus Christ would return immediately, not 2,000 years from now. They were looking at an immediate return. So when they start to talk about the last days, even the people that did the translation from the Greek to the English, they're still looking at that dynamically in that idealistic way of saying it's supposed to be near time after Jesus Christ had passed away. So there's a lot of nuances in there that we could speak upon how Joseph Smith could be the one who dedicates the temple still, how the saints of that generation could still be involved in that building of the temple. Things work in God's ways in time, not ours. And I'm just saying that I'm going to give, because of where I come from as a Latter-day Saint, and because I have been given the knowledge that Joseph Smith is a prophet of God and won't deny it and can't deny it, then I have to give the avenue which says that Joseph Smith's prophecy is true, but we are not looking at it correctly.
if it's okay, I'd like to add something as well.
Thank you.
All right, so Paul, yes. So something that kind of stood out to me, it says dedicates this temple. Something else that appears also in Revelation and Doctrine and Covenants is that in Adam on Diamond, before Christ comes again, that as prophesied in Daniel, that at the Ancient of Days, which we believe is Adam on Diamond, that prophets from every dispensation will gather together in Adam on Diamond, and under the presiding jurisdiction of Adam, and they will meet together there and give the keys back to Adam, and then Christ will come and Adam will give the keys back to him. So, and obviously Adam's dead. He's been dead for a very long time, as have, most of basically all the prophets except for our latter-day prophet currently and the apostles that we have right now. So, who isn't to say that Joseph Smith couldn't come back to dedicate the temple? That's all I have to say.
So Ellicks, where does it say any of this in the Bible about prophets returning?
What?
Can you show me those verses?
He was asking about Daniel's prophecy, Alex.
Can we look at
Yeah.
those verses?
Sure. The one about the Ancient of Days?
The Ancient of Days is the Father. The Son of Man is Jesus. That's what that means. The Ancient of Days is on his throne, which is the Father, giving glory, giving the kingdom to the Son in that chapter. That's what that's talking about. It's talking about the Antichrist. I don't know what you're talking about, prophets coming back. Can we look at those verses?
Okay, so I'm just saying, you're saying that Joseph Smith can't possibly dedicate the temple because he's dead. And I'm just saying we don't believe he's gone forever.
But your claim is
and
that he may
we
return.
also believe that all the other prophets will come back at some point.
Show me where
So
show me where it says that all the prophets will return.
It's in the Doctrine and Covenants. It says that the prophets will return.
Covenants, not scripture. Can you show me this in the Bible?
Okay, I think you're missing the point that I'm trying to make, but
do you have a claim? Can you show me within the Bible where it says that prophets will return to the earth?
There's only one reference. There's only one reference to a prophet returning to bring the hearts of man, our fathers, back to the sons, and the sons back to the fathers. And you're right, Paul. There's really nothing biblical.
Let's talk about Elijah.
Yeah.
Which Jesus said he has already come through John the Baptist.
So you believe in reincarnation?
No, it says the spirit of Elijah was within John the Baptist.
So you're saying the spirit of Elijah. Wait a minute. Elijah was translated. He did not die. So his body and his physical body and the spirit are one. All right. So they can't just separate themselves or the body would die. So the spirit of Elijah could not dwell within John the Baptist.
I mean, it's up to you how you want to interpret that, Arthur. I just know what Jesus said. Yeah. And to answer Ellicks, when it comes to people coming back, the only time we hear about that are these two witnesses that will prophesy in Jerusalem, and they will, as they speak, fire will come breathing out of their mouth, right? These two prophets, they call them two witnesses. Many say that it could be Moses and Elijah that will return, and they will be the ones on the streets. They will be killed, and they will lay there for 3 days and then resurrect from the grave. There is nothing about a coming of all the prophets, as you've just stated. This is not biblical.
I want to chime in just real quick. It says Elijah would return in the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Is that right, Paul?
It also says that's what we believe, that it will be in that time.
Great and dreadful day. And what would you describe as the great and dreadful day of the Lord? Is it the time that he came?
So the great and dreadful day of the Lord is a second coming.
Right. So
what that means is the wicked, they will be very fearful on that day because they will be destroyed.
Because then Elijah is coming before the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And we
believe that he will be one of those two witnesses.
Okay, so he does come. So there's at least...
Sure, we believe it will be at least Elijah.
There is a couple of prophets that are coming before the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And so
we only know of two witnesses. Joseph Smith won't be one of those guys.
Okay, but let me ask you this, continue on with that discussion, and then I'll give it to Ellicks. So if what is the purpose of Elijah's return? It's to bring the hearts of the fathers back to the sons and the sons back to the father. And that has nothing to do with the work that we do for genealogy, right? Inspiring men and women to find. And do you think that's healthy for a society to forget
No,
their
it's talking
fathers?
about people that are living.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, is it healthy for a society to forget their ancestors?
I mean, Jesus was posed that question about even burying the dead, and he even told that person that
The dead will take care of
I did look
themselves.
at the verse, but let the dead bury the dead. I mean, it's when it comes to looking back at those people that have passed on, it's fine to think about them for a time, but to reminisce about our ancestors doing genealogy, that's not necessary.
Okay. Anyway, Alex, you want to chime in, I'm sure.
Yes, so I mean, if it's not necessary for us to, look back on our genealogy, Paul, then why is it that there's so much genealogy in the Bible? Like Chronicles is all genealogy. Genesis has a lot of genealogy too. Like it lists the generations of Adam.
And don't
What
forget
about
Jesus Christ and Matthew and Luke.
Matthew?
They talk about the genealogy of Jesus Christ.
I was about to say Matthew too. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and read a verse to you guys to help you understand why we don't do genealogies anymore. And this is in First Timothy chapter 1. And let's see. We're actually
Okay, Paul, I already know which one you're going to talk about. I'm just going to tell you, he's not talking about looking to our forefathers. He's talking about worshiping endless genealogies like
yeah,
Gnosticism.
so actually, yeah, so First Timothy 1, 1 through 5. Let me go and read it so we can get what Paul is saying here. Paul, an apostle of Jesus Christ, by the commandment of God and our Savior and Lord Jesus Christ, which is our hope, unto Timothy, my own son in the faith, grace, mercy, and peace from God our Father and Jesus Christ, as I besought thee to abide still at Ephesus, when I went into Macedonia, that thou mightest charge some that they teach no other doctrine, neither give heed to fables and endless genealogies, which minister questions rather than godly edifying, which is in faith, so do. Now, the end of the commandment is charity out of pure heart and of good conscience and of faith unfeigned. Did Ellicks leave us?
Oh, he'll come back. I think he got lost.
Okay, you're good. You're good. So again, we are
You back there,
being
Alex?
Yeah,
so
sorry
we're
about that.
oh
It's all
you're
I'm
right.
you're
back.
good. So we're being warned against heeding endless genealogies.
Okay, Paul, that's not what that's
Minister
talking about.
questions. Now let
It's
me.
talking, it says
Let him
fables
give him
and
a minute
endless.
there, Alex, and then you.
Do you
Okay.
mind if I give my
Your
reason for
time.
talking about this? Okay. I bring this up because in Mormonism, you see endless genealogies. What does this mean? It means that if you're a Latter-day Saint, you're gonna be asked to find the records of all of your ancestors, spanning back your family tree as far back as you can. You're gonna try to get the birth records, who they were married to, their children. And what does it do? It does minister questions, which this is something that Paul would be speaking against in his time frame, when it talks about people just trying to find all of this and that about our ancestry. It's just not important. And if you were to look at any genealogies being kept after Jesus, it wasn't. Nobody kept genealogies after Jesus.
I disagree with that, Paul.
And then in
Same.
Titus chapter 3, verses 8 and 9, Paul speaks about this again. And he says this: this is a faithful saying, and these things I will that thou affirm constantly that they have believed in God might be careful to maintain good works. These things are good and profitable unto men, but avoid foolish questions and genealogies and contentions and strivings about the law, for they are unprofitable and vain. So we're supposed to avoid genealogies.
Can we let Alex chime in for about 5 minutes or so, because we haven't given him enough time to really help benefit this conversation.
Okay, so first of all, Paul, that's not what it's talking about. It's not talking about keeping records of our fathers, because if that's the case, then why do they do it so frequently in the scriptures? In both the Old and the New Testament, not just the Old Testament. And so you can't just say it's an Old Testament thing that we don't do anymore. No, he's talking about Gnosticism here. People were making like pantheons of, which we see also in like the Catholic Church nowadays with like the saints and everything. But they were making like these pantheons of like greater gods and lesser gods and greater beings, lesser beings type of thing. And anyways, that's what he's talking about, is these endless genealogies of just made up beings that just don't need to exist. I'm trying to pull up an article right now on that. Um, give me just 1 second. If we don't have enough time, then I can't find it right now, but I'll send you the article, and you can go ahead and read through it. It does reference scriptures in the New Testament about this, but that's what it's talking about, is Gnosticism. It's not talking about, not keeping a record of your fathers. Because, I mean, also, if you're keeping records of your fathers is a fable is something that never happened. It's something that is made up. It's fiction. Um, your forefathers are not fiction. Obviously, they happened, or you wouldn't be here.
Yes, it's
So,
fable and endless genealogies. They're different things.
okay, but it's talking about Gnosticism, Paul. Go ahead, AJ.
Well, if you don't mind, I said no, I disagree with Paul, and I slapped my own self for chiming in like that. Wrong on my part. But the way what I know, what you're wrong on, Paul, is in every Bible that you could probably find that was a part of a family, the family genealogy was kept in there. And that was traditional throughout all the ages. My genealogy goes all the way back to Adam. Somebody traced it back. And the reason that was found was because of all the kings and queens who kept their genealogy. The reason that they would keep their genealogy because of the line of authority. That's why we have Jesus Christ, again, that succession of authority through David, eventually to him, say that he's the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. And that would be, again, within royalty, they would do that same lineage to create a tie from the first king to their kingship. And therefore, they were validated by that link between. And it could go on for 15, 20 generations. And then we have my cousin, who's a good Baptist man. He would disagree with you because being Chickasaw Indian, our great grandfather never registered for the to be recognized as an Indian, so we never got no reparations for that. So he says, for him, monetarily, it's important for him to know that his ancestor was a part of the Chickasaw Nation. So I would say that that not keeping genealogy is not a practice throughout the ages, but it's a practice that they did keep genealogy for those facts. All right, Paul.
Okay, so let's see if both of you can define something for me. Can you define an endless genealogy for me?
He's talking about Gnosticism,
No,
about
just
this
define the
endless
term.
pantheon of deities that they're
Ellicks,
putting on the.
Ellicks, he just specifically endless genealogies.
Just
Stay with that, and
if,
then
if
answer
you were
that.
to define endless genealogies, what would it mean?
Yeah, I disagree with Ellicks right there. So yeah, just answer that question, and I don't want to play games with this.
Fair enough. If I were to define endless genealogies with no context and to take it just completely out of context from what it's talking about here, I guess I would just say it means a genealogy that goes on forever and ever, which technically it doesn't. So,
Okay, Arthur?
Yeah, I say the same thing. The endless genealogies were, and I think uh, uh, endless genealogies meaning that you're just doing nothing more than genealogy work. That's all you're doing. You're not in the doing nothing more than that, and so you're just endlessly just consumed by it so much that you have no other purpose in life. So that would be in my thought process of what endless genealogies is.
So you don't think there are people in your church that they take up most of their time doing genealogy work?
If they do, I think they're habitual, maybe addicted to it, and any addiction is pretty bad. That's the, but
So you would say that's a bad thing to do continual genealogy every
yeah,
day.
if you're doing it because you have if it's providing a link for you to a family member. See, I couldn't find my grandfather on my dad's side for 25 years. I'd look for him. This year I finally found it. Found the information. My grandfather, not my great grandfather, not my great great grandfather. We're talking about my grandfather. Do you know how excited I was to know that I actually have somebody that give my dad his name? It's huge. And I did search for it multiple times over the 25
Was
years.
that like an endless type of a
It's an
search
endless
for you?
desire to
Could it
want
be
to be.
classified as an endless genealogy?
Uh, if you, I think anybody that loves their family history would always be engaged on. And I think what you're saying, Paul, are you engaged in just looking for names for just look for name's sake? And I think that kind of rolls into that, where you're just doing it because it's habitual and not really having a purpose. But somebody who's genuinely looking for ancestors because they want to become a part of that legacy. I think that's but they're also serving within the Lord's purpose of it. Then it's a righteous thing that they can do.
Well, we should look into this for a minute. I mean, you guys say it's a righteous thing to do genealogy work, but if you were a Christian and you looked at the real reason why you guys do it, they would say it's absolutely wrong. And the reason is you guys are doing it to bring these names into your temple. That's the sole purpose. That is your sole purpose, to do works for the dead for these individuals. So that's why I warn people to not go to ancestry.com, these family history websites, because they will take these names. They will take your genealogy records and they will do the works for the dead for these people in these LDS temples.
I got a question about that, Paul. So what if we waste our time?
So what if you've
What
been
if
warned?
if you don't
So let's say you've been warned that it's wrong.
if you're saying that the temple is not of God and God does not recognize anything that goes on inside of that temple, including the proxy work that we do,
That's correct.
then we're wasting our time.
It's
because
not
it
just
doesn't
wasting
matter.
your time. I'm saying it's demonic, it's evil, it's abominable in the sight of God, and
Well, so
both have been warned, and you continue to go there. You continue to do
we enjoy it.
these so-called
If you want to
ordinances
call that
in these
demonic
temples.
and not of God, that's fine. We don't say that's true, but I'm just saying if we're wasting our time, what difference does it matter if we're getting names from ancestry.com or anything else?
It matters because it's a salvific issue.
How?
This is salvific.
It's not mine. I'm doing just fine.
The reason is there are some beliefs that if one person believes in something and I don't, it's not a saving knowledge problem. But if you're wrong about doing temple work and I'm right that it's an abomination to God, then it's
Then
hell.
I go to hell.
It's hellfire damnation when you die. And this is the big problem. This is huge. And that's why I bring it up. I mean,
But it's my salvation, isn't it?
it is, but I'm here to warn people of the wrath to come if they are doing what's wrong
But you're
instead of God.
Not
but
warning.
well, what I'm saying is if I'm wasting my time going to ancestry.com to get those names or wherever I'm going to go to get those names, then what you're saying, I mean, so you're saying that that you're trying to protect others from falling into that trap of joining the LDS Church or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints by investing time and putting names into ancestry.com who are non-members who don't care one hoot about what we do in our temples.
Yeah,
And
they don't know. There's
because
a lot of people that
what
don't
difference
realize.
does it make? I'm just what's that?
There's a lot of people that just go there thinking they're just going to do ancestry work and don't realize that their names that they put in there are going to go into the temples.
But we're just wasting our time as a Latter-day Saint there. They're doing what they want to
If you're
do.
not, I guess if you're not wasting your time there and it's an active God, then can you help people in the audience understand how it's an active God?
It's
I'd like to
offering
let you chime
everybody
in
the
for a little bit.
chance.
I could talk all day long, you know that. I mean,
Well, that's why we're here today. Let's see how, if you can help people understand how any of the temple work for dead people is an active God. But I
Okay,
have
so
till 9:30, so we have to top.
okay, so I'll give you just the short answer, Paul. The short answer is we're not forcing anybody to do anything in the afterlife that they don't want to do. All we're doing is when we do the work in the temple, it's offering them a chance to be saved if they want to be, because like not everybody got that choice when they were on Earth. Communist nations, some people just didn't have the gospel on the earth at the time. So that's all we're doing is we're just offering them that chance. If they don't take it, they don't take it. If they take it, great. It doesn't matter. Like it's just all about giving them that choice. Because it's all about agency, Paul. It's all about agency.
I'm going to say one thing, and then Paul, please. I don't want to go away from what we're talking about, but it's going to go that way because we're going to say, is baptism a necessity to enter into the kingdom of God? If it is, then the work that we do is a necessity. If it's not, then it's in vain and just makes us people wet and happy.
So you have to think about something. Can we save dead people? That should be the number one thing that we should be thinking of right now.
Jesus
Does
Christ
the Bible
about
state
anybody.
anywhere that we as a people have a right to be attempting to save someone that's dead? Even if you're right about baptism being the way to heaven and the way that saves people, which I would say is false, even if that's true, the Bible does not say that we can pray somebody out of hell or that we can do a work for the dead and they can be saved. The Bible does never teach anything like that. Instead, it teaches that when we die comes judgment. And what does that mean? immediately when we die, there will be judgment set upon us. And this is before the great white throne judgment seat. What this means is we will know immediately that we are judged and we are wicked in the sight of God as we either go down into hell or righteous as we ascend up into paradise and then await our rewards. If we are going to receive judgment when we die, then why would a person then even need to do works for them if judgment's already set?
Okay. Are you done? I want to make sure I give you the
Yeah, go ahead, Arthur.
yeah.
What's your response?
I was just going to, Ellicks, did you have something to talk about, say on that subject, or?
You go ahead.
Okay,
I've kind of
so
said a lot already.
right, so when um, is there anything biblical about proxy work? I think the pinnacle of the atonement, or the atonement itself, is where one is set aside or set apart to take upon the sins through an act of love for mankind. It's Jesus Christ didn't sin one time, according to Christian theology. Me, different. He's the only sacrifice, but sinless. Anyway, what I'm saying, but he took upon him the sins of the world, whether it be on the cross or in the Garden of Eden, it doesn't matter. He took upon him the sins of the world. He did not one sin. So, but he paid the price for the sinner. We as Latter-day Saints are essentially playing the part of Christ when we do the proxy work, saying that I am taking upon me this name, my dad. So my boy took upon him the name of my dad, so that when he was dunked into the water, that he came out clean. Just as much as Jesus Christ did the work for me, I'm doing the work for my ancestors. And it's kind of it's a very small tie, and it's got a lot of holes, and I can't think of the right words that I wanted to use. So, but what I'm saying is, biblically, I would give Paul this, that there is nothing real biblical about proxy work that I can think of at the moment, especially for the dead. We just know that there's only one reference, and it's very vague, and that's, why else are you baptizing for the dead when the dead rise not at all? And it could be very well that Paul was talking about Jesus Christ, and these people are baptizing in his name, but yet they don't believe Jesus Christ was risen from the dead. And as a Latter-day Saint, we would say, well, he's talking about the dead and their resurrection, or to rise. But either way, there's not enough in the Bible, and I agree with Paul. But I would simply say, on my part, that the genius of Joseph Smith is beyond what I could have imagined, trying to put a church together. Here he's got a problem. He's saying that baptism is a necessity. I'm talking about Joseph Smith. Absolute necessity. But he knows that he's got Alvin that's in the grave and never got baptized. And he comes up with this work called Baptism for the Dead. And it works. And you know what? It works for me too.
So I do have. You said you couldn't think of any scriptures. I found one. First Peter chapter 4 verse 6. It says, For this cause was the gospel preached also to them that are dead, that they might be judged according to men in the flesh, but live according to God in the spirit. Now, a few things about this. If they're already going to be judged and they're going to their final destination, what's the point in preaching the gospel to them and giving them that opportunity to learn of Christ if it's already been decided where they're going right as they die?
I think he's asking you, Paul, on that one.
Mm-hmm. So what happened when Jesus was being crucified? A thief on the cross. I will answer your question, but I'm going to give you a my synopsis first of what's taking place here. A thief on the cross recognized Jesus and said, "Hey," speaking to the other thief, "why are you reviling against this man? He's committed no sin." And then he looks to Jesus. He says, "Remember me when you enter paradise." And he said, "On this day you shall be with me in paradise." So where did Jesus go down to? He did go into a place called spirit prison, which we would call Sheol. As Christians, we believe that Sheol is the place where both spirit, where we have hell and paradise combined, but they're separated. Okay, so when Jesus went and preached to those spirits that were dead, he brought the thief on the cross with him, and he preached to the saints in paradise. If you were to look in, I believe it's in Mark, when it talks about the resurrection of Jesus, it says, when Jesus was resurrected from the grave, it says the tombs were opened and the saints came out of the graves. So these were those that heard the message of Christ when he went into Gehenna, where we have spirit prison, and he opened the graves to those that were dead. This, I would say, is the first thing we hear about of a resurrection of the dead. And this is during the time of Jesus' resurrection. But again, when he preached about him suffering for their sins, and therefore the graves were opened. And not that we can go to people in hell and help and give them a baptism or work for the dead and say that they can receive it and then escape the bonds of escape the lake of fire and then enter heaven. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen, and the Bible doesn't teach that. So I hope that answers your question.
Alex,
Not at all.
Alex, you look like you were kind of wanting to get in there.
I mean,
Respectful there, Alex. Respectful, young.
yeah.
We all have to be respectful for each other. We have to master that. Took me 50 years or so
Yeah.
to do that. Okay, so you're a kid, so just accept that. We have to accept it too. All right.
But you surely didn't like my explanation, Ellicks. So what was wrong with the explanation?
It didn't make any sense. No offense, Paul, but it
So
just didn't make any
what
sense.
didn't make sense to you, Ellicks?
Any of it.
Did the thief
Like,
go with Jesus to paradise? Was that a true statement?
yes, he did. You know, Jesus doesn't lie.
So did
But
Jesus go to
also, you're
paradise
saying
with the
you
thief?
said that only he was going with him, and only the gospel is only being preached to the righteous. Why would it need to be preached to the righteous if they've already made it?
So if those
You know, like
they're
they already know the
there.
scriptures. They already know the gospel. So like there's no reason for them to have to be, preached to anymore. It's just, preaching to the choir at that point because they're already in heaven and they're good.
Well, they
So
need to
why
know
would
that Jesus suffered for our sins. That was a huge act. That was probably the biggest thing that's ever taken place on earth. And they need to hear the good news. And you've heard about the verses where the saints came out of their graves, right?
yes.
So if he preached to them, and then they came out of their grave. Doesn't that make sense?
Okay, yeah, but preaching to the choir here though, because they already know the gospel. They're
So
already
to
saved.
Jesus, in Jesus' mind, is it preaching to the choir?
Also,
Oh,
this is after Jesus's resurrection. This is after all of that. This is during the apostles' ministry to all nations.
What is?
can I ask a question real quick?
First
Go
Peter.
ahead.
Spirits are already in their place, aren't they? It's just the physical bodies that were released. Is that right?
Yes. So we all die, and
Right.
our
So the spirits
spirits in our
already,
bodies.
I
Yes.
would say the spirits are already either in prison or in paradise.
Well,
Because there
we
has to
would
be a
call
paradise
prison
somewhere.
is
If
where
he's,
both
does he establish
paradise
paradise?
goes.
No, this is actually a real question, Paul. And I
Sure.
think it's not the got you question. I have a genuine question for you.
Sure.
Uh, whenever we talk about paradise and we have spirit prison or shield, there's there's when does if if it's only based on the fact that Jesus Christ was resurrected or broke the bonds of death through the resurrection, does paradise start immediately at that moment, or did they already have a paradise established before even Jesus Christ was uh, presented to the
Sure, I can answer that pretty simply. So, if you look at the story of the rich man and Lazarus, we hear
Yeah.
about the rich man, and he died and he woke up in hell. And when he was in hell, he looked up far off and he saw the poor man, and he was with Abraham, and they were together in paradise. And that is where he wanted some water to soothe his tongue because it was burning. It said
So paradise already existed, therefore there was already
exactly. It's
spirits.
called
There
the
was already spirits there.
Abraham's bosom was where paradise.
Yeah. So I would say, so what I'm looking at is if paradise already exists, the spirits are already uh, already are part of the knowledge that Jesus Christ atoned for their sins.
I
I
mean,
think that I think you
did
can
they already have that knowledge while they were in paradise? Did
because
God keep them from what's happening on earth? We don't know. So maybe
that,
that
that,
was the reason
that's
why
what
Jesus went to preach to them.
we'd have to assume that they had knowledge. I guarantee I
And
grant
nobody knows that if the spirits can see exactly what's happening on earth, we don't know that. Okay, we that's only an exception.
okay.
So to say Jesus need to preach to them and tell them what happened, that I believe that was necessary.
Yeah. So anyway, Alex, go ahead, please. Sorry about interrupting all that.
No, it's fine. I mean, I've kind of said everything I think I need to for this, so
I would, and I'll just want to, were there ever the were there ever spirits that came back uh after they had died? And the only time that I can think of is that we have Moses and Elijah who come back to the Mount Transfiguration. I think is we know Elijah was transfigured. We're only speculating that Moses was. So, and Peter, James, and John seen Moses. So if he's a spirit, then there is an avenue for spirits to actually see what is transpiring on this earth. I think it's important for them to see it because the only way that we know that Jesus is the Christ is through a witness, and they have to witness it for themselves. Uh,
I,
I mean, that's where I would come in on this.
I'd also say, with Gabriel appearing to Mary, to tell her that she's going to have the Son of God. That's another one. And of course, we believe that Gabriel is Noah,
Yeah.
and I don't know what you believe about that, Paul, but
Gabriel
we do
is
believe that.
Noah.
Yeah,
What?
the angel Gabriel
You've
is
never heard that
Noah.
one, Paul?
Well, I've heard. Well, it's a Mormon doctrine.
Well, it
Yeah,
is.
but he's returning. An angel is returning to Earth in some form.
Yeah, guys, that's a huge assumption that's not biblical. See,
The
the
question
same
is,
thing that you're saying that Adam was Michael, the archangel. That's a huge assumption too. It's like you're giving names of people, making them angels for some weird reason.
well,
I mean,
there's nothing
you
wrong.
have
There's
to be very
nothing new
careful about
about
that.
there's nothing new about receiving a new name, because we know that Simon was given the name Peter and Saul was given the name Paul, and them were the two that came right off the top of my head. So
Jacob was given the
for
name
Adam
Israel.
to receive a new
But I
name,
mean, becoming an angel, guys,
well, it's just
that's a ridiculous
we
statement.
call it an angel, but we call Moroni an angel, but we would say that he was a resurrected being or resurrected man. Just because we put the title angel on there doesn't mean that it means the same thing as what we call the angel that comes to the angels in the outfield movie, where the flapping of the wings. It's just a way to reference something outside of our uh, perspective of existence.
So let's talk about the supposed angel Moroni for a minute.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So let me help you understand the problems with that statement, saying he was an angel. Number one, we hear about this resurrection of the dead when Jesus rose. Okay. The second time we hear about a resurrection of the grave is during the first resurrection, during the millennial reign of Christ. Moroni supposedly lived around, what was it, 300,
400.
400 AD, which doesn't fit. He
Why
wasn't
not?
he wasn't the time he didn't live before Christ, and he didn't live during the time of the millennial reign. So to say he was already resurrected, that's an untrue statement, because nobody has been resurrected from the time of Jesus till the millennial reign. Nobody will ever be resurrected until then.
Where does it say that in the Bible?
The Bible teaches that. So we
Yeah,
can
where?
read that in Revelation 21.
But that no one's going to be resurrected until Christ comes
It
again?
says that that's the first resurrection.
But why was the graves opened up?
Actually, that's Revelation 20. Let me go and read it to
Yeah,
you.
but I asked the question: why is the graves opened up, where it allows the physical bodies to be raised from the dead and reunite with the spirits?
I don't understand your statement. What is your
Well,
question?
again, the graves were opened on the days
Yes, that was the time of Jesus.
okay, and if that's true, that
But
means there was a
Moroni didn't
resurrection
exist
at that
yet.
time.
That was
There
the
was
first
there was a
resurrection, Paul.
resurrection at that time. Yes.
Okay,
That was the
so
first resurrection.
that would not be
No, it was not called the first resurrection. That was just a resurrection of the saints at that time.
and
Now, when you read in
But was it the
Revelation,
first one then?
so let me read Revelation
let
20.
him read it. Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
and where is this at again, please, Paul?
Revelation chapter 20. And let's just start with verse 4. It says, "And I saw thrones, and they that sat upon them, and judgment was set upon unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. But the rest of the dead, not again, until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On such the second death hath no power, but they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years." Notice it doesn't talk about a temple either. But again, this is when the first resurrection will take place. So we're going to have to wait. The souls will rest in either paradise or be tormented and tortured in hell until the first resurrection for the ones in paradise, but those in hell, they'll have to wait till the second resurrection, which will be the great white throne judgment seat.
Okay, so you're saying that the first
So Moroni couldn't have been resurrected.
so you're saying that the first resurrection is after the 1,000 years that Christ reigns, or is that?
No, it's the beginning part of the 1,000-year reign is when your
so it's the beginning
first
part of
resurrection
1,000.
begins.
Okay,
Mhm.
and then the second resurrection would be for those who were
After the
the great.
1,000-year reign, when the great white throne judgment seat,
I thought we were all
and the
going
people
to be.
from all nations that were wicked go before God. The righteous and wicked, those that were righteous will receive rewards. Those that were wicked, they will hear the words that God, Jesus never knew them. He's slothful and wicked servant, and he will cast them into the lake of fire, which is the second death. And it says, if your name is not written in the Lamb's Book of Life, you shall be thrown into the lake of fire. And that's what this chapter talks about.
So where does my Baptist friends get the notion that all will be standing before the great white throne of God?
We will.
All of us.
Everyone.
And we'll all be judged at that time. Not just the wicked, but the righteous too.
Let me read it. It says this, and I saw a great, this is verse 11, and I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth, the heaven, fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. And the sea, this is those in paradise, those that had water among them, because we know there was no water in hell. And the sea gave up their dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged, every man according to the work. So we got those that were righteous and the wicked brought together at the judgment seat. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. So those that were in hell, they will find out their names are not in the Lamb's Book of Life, and they will be thrown into the lake of fire. The next verse says that. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. So again, it doesn't talk about those in paradise. Nothing happens to them. Just those that were a part of hell, they will be thrown into the lake of fire.
Yeah. So we've established that we're all going to be judged for whatever reason. I mean, for our own works, and but you're telling me that God could not bring forth a resurrection if it was necessary for his plan to certain individuals. Just because, I mean, he can do what he can interpret it. God can write this, but he can also use other scripture to allow him to.
I mean, if you believe the Bible is correct in the statement that the first resurrection happens at this time, then you will disbelieve that there was a resurrection for Moroni.
I think God could use, just like if that gravity prevents us from having any ability to get off the ground unless we use force and lift to offset those gravity. So we know those laws. We know how to use those laws against themselves, or to enable us to do one thing that the law doesn't allow us to do. And same thing with God. I think he's pretty smart, or smart enough to know how to use his laws that belong to him so that he can move his work forward and still comply with what is going on here.
But notice how you have to say, well, how you have to justify it now. And it's say that, well, because the Bible says this, well, maybe God.
But he says, thou shalt not kill, but yet
Moroni was a righteous man, and he decided to resurrect him.
Yeah, but it says thou shalt not kill, but he kills people. And he knows how what he's saying perfectly so that he can use the power that he has to make sure that his work goes forward. So just because he says something that into our feeble minds that we have that are as if you were to put the world's geniuses together, you'd still be less than 1% of what God's understanding is. So I think God can use thou shalt not kill, but also command people to kill when it's necessary for his plan to continue to go forward. So if he says that this resurrection, the first resurrection, will not come at this until this time, he can also put in place that he needs these particular people to be resurrected, so he has a forward movement on his plan. So I
It would
don't
have to make sense according to your belief that they'd have to be resurrected, but if you're a Bible believing Christian, this wouldn't make any sense at all.
Well, yeah, I'd agree with
Well,
that.
you don't believe in the Bible, so
I don't believe the Bible.
no, you don't. You believe
Well,
what you want to hear.
What kind of statement is that?
yeah, I'm confused on that one too, Alex.
Sorry.
read
He's
the Bible on a daily basis.
I'm gonna teach Alex how to really debate people and not.
I mean, I just think that you just believe Paul just what you want to believe and just ignore the rest.
But don't we all do that, Alex?
I don't.
I mean, I do. I admit that there's some things that are contradictory. I'm not. I see. I don't have to. I don't have to build something up grandiose to help me get over the log. You know what I mean? I can play it straight. So I get it. So I have an advantage. All right. So what I'm saying is, there's things that I would say again. I just go back to the example: "Thou shalt not kill," and then you have God commanding people to kill. That's a contradiction, true contradiction. And because of that, but because we look at it in the form of man and our understanding, and we can't get past that sometimes. And I'm not downing Ellicks. I hope you weren't taking offense to that. I'm just saying that yes, the Bible is correct, and so is all the other scriptures we have, but we're not capable of reading God's mind and filling in all the gaps that are there. Because again, I'm not. I mean, if you look at the four Gospels, and there's the where you can't say the Bible is absolutely 100% correct, because you have the four Gospels and you have Mary coming at night, Mary coming during the day, Mary and some other women coming to the tomb, and there's different ways that the story is being told throughout the four Gospels on that particular subject, which is one of the key elements of the Bible. So does the Bible correctly marry itself together like that? No, it's kind of it kind of has to be pushed together in order for it to work. And same thing with the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, Pearl of Great Price. You have to force some things together to make them work. And I get that. I'm honest with that. So I'm not, I'm prepared to say, yes, there's some things that what Paul's saying could be right. But again, I interpret the Bible and the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, Pearl of Great Price by what the journey that I'm on. And I'm okay with that. And I'm not worried about Paul being right or wrong so much. I just enjoy the engagement. And when we learn that, and we're not trying to force our will upon each other, it makes things makes the conversation become more real, and not trying to tear somebody down, but actually let's have a discussion. Let's learn from each other. I went, Ellicks, you didn't know this, but I went to Baptist Bible study for a couple of years straight. Loved it. All black members. I was the only gringo, and my brother and the son-in-law of the pastor, and we're the only white boys there, and so, but they taught me a lot, and they reminded me of a lot of things, and I was able to be in that place. They allowed me to pray in front of the masses. Didn't have a problem with me teaching the people. So there's a way to communicate that allows us to move the ball down the field. Might be slow paced, but it gets there. And then we're all communicating about the love of God and not trying to figure out who's top dog. And that's my final statement. And I know Paul's got to leave. So who wants to go last?
Well, let me read some verses real fast.
Yeah.
We can discuss this if you want to. This is what I like to bring up whenever I hear people talking about works for the dead. You got to look at Revelation chapter 21 to see what Jesus revealed to his people. It talks about those people that are in paradise, how God's going to wipe away all the tears from their eyes, how it's going to be a most wonderful time for them to now go from paradise and enter heaven. And then it talks about those that are wicked and what happens to them. And it's a very sorrowful, I would say very fearful thing to even look at these verses if you're in sin. Because it will speak to your heart, it will speak to your soul, because it will no longer cause you to live a life thinking that you're going to have another chance. For that's not possible inside of God, that we will have second chances after this life. So I want to read starting with verse 1, because this is the good part. It says, and I saw a new heaven, new earth. The first heaven and first earth were passed away, and there were no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and he shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. And there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Doesn't it sound so beautiful? It's amazing, right? And he that sat upon the throne said, behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, write, for these words are true and faithful. And he said unto me, it is done. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. This is the verse. Verse 8. I believe that you cannot believe this verse and still believe in works for the dead. And this is the reason. Just read it with me and see if you can still believe in it after you read this verse. But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have a second chance. Is that what it's saying? No, it says shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. So we see a lot of people lumped in here that are wicked. These people experienced hell. They were then judged according to the last chapter we read. And they're going to be found out guilty, not having given a baptism for the dead, endowment for the dead, initiatory, sealing. None of that's going to help them. For it says, these people will have their part in the lake of fire. It's a second death. This is a big deal. There's a there just as we have a sea of water. Imagine looking at the sun and its rays, its beaming rays. And if you were to look deep into the sun, where it's just scorching hot, there's lakes of fire upon that sun. That's how this lake of fire is going to be for the wicked. And it's just something to think about for a minute. If when you die, if you're going to be judged in that moment, you die. And if you are an idolater, a liar, a murderer, whoremonger, any one of these people, are you going to be able to receive a work for the dead for you if you're already destined to the lake of fire? Is this even possible? So, what do you guys have to say about this?
That sounds like Calvinism.
How?
You said if you're already predestined for the lake of fire, there's
I'm not
no
saying
second
anybody's
division.
predestined for anything. I'm just saying they chose this lifestyle.
You said the word predestined.
If I said predestined, I didn't mean predestined. I said they chose a life of sin. These were vile, willful sinners.
So I'll chime in on that because I had a thought on it because it's important. Okay. Now me and Paul discussed this, and I thought it was the last time I spoke, but me and Paul had talked about this before. You have the thief on the cross, and he dies, and he goes to paradise. And I asked the question, what does God see in this scenario? Does the spirit somehow become unsavable from the moment it leaves the body and goes into the spirit world? I don't think anything's impossible for God. If Jesus Christ is preaching to the dead that are in prison, there's a reason he's doing it, because he's saying, I am the resurrection, I am the life. And those who believe in me will have everlasting life. He's giving them a chance one more time to say, I accept you as my savior. Even those who died before Jesus Christ was ever thought about here on this earth, they were also in prison because they were in paradise. We'll call it paradise. They were in spirit world. Okay. Don't let me misspeak. If I do, just slap me on the back of my head. All right.
While you're in that thought process, answer this question too. Did Jesus also say there is a resurrection to damnation?
That one you'd have to explain that one to me because I don't.
Did Jesus say there's a resurrection to life and damnation? Do you remember that verse?
I vaguely.
Do you want me to bring it up?
Yeah, sure. But while you're bringing it up, let me finish
go ahead.
My thought. So again, I don't see how God is not capable of not bringing forth salvation through Jesus Christ, even those who are spirits, even if they were the righteous, the most righteous in the Old Testament, their righteousness was nothing but filthy rags. And they would still need a redeemer no matter what. All of us need a redeemer. All of us need the atonement. And if the spirits that were righteousness were as filthy rags to receive the atonement, then the same thing would be given to those after the resurrection.
Okay, so John chapter 5, verse 29 says, and shall come forth that they have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation.
Okay. Yeah,
So there
Go
are
ahead,
two
Ellis. What
types
do you have?
of
Ellis,
resurrections
Ellicks.
here.
I'm sorry about the Ellis thing.
Go ahead, Alex.
Um, yes. So you're talking about the resurrection of the damned. Um, so yes, I mean we do believe that everybody will receive, even like the worst of people, as long as they have received their body while they were on the earth, they are going to be resurrected. They're going to receive their bodies again. Doesn't mean that they're going to be saved though. So that's kind of all I got to say about that.
So yeah,
So
then what
can
verse
you
was that
guys?
again? What verse was that again, Paul? I apologize. I try to get
That's
through.
you can start with verse 27 through 29 because it talks about the judgment.
Okay.
In John chapter 5, it says, and hath given him authority to execute judgment also, because he is the Son of Man. Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming, in the which all that are in the graves shall hear his voice, and shall come forth, they that have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation.
Okay. Now, there's not one that has ever, like I said, and I would go back to Isaiah saying that our righteousness is nothing but filthy rags. So we're all damned to hell
Who
without
says,
the
so who
without.
says we're righteous?
I'm just
Do
saying.
we say we're righteous?
I understand you either the resurrection of life or to damnation. And for me, I'm speaking on how my head works. Okay, I'm not trying to claim something other than what you're saying in dispute. I'm only saying this is where my head is on it, because again, without Jesus Christ, we're all damned to hell. And shall come forth they that have done good unto the resurrection of life. And that which is good would be accepting Jesus Christ. And they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation, which would be those who did not accept Jesus Christ. So, and I think, yeah, I mean, but you do have Moses and you have Elijah, who's at the Mount of Transfiguration. So they're in a pretty good place, I would say. You have Abraham and Lazarus in that story who are in a good place. So I would say that it is true what Paul is saying, that there will be those who are damned because that's the nature of who they are. Just like in the Book of Mormon says, an evil spirit cannot bring forth a good fruit. That scenario where it's evil is going to do evil, good will do good. And so those who in their hearts were doing evil because that was who they naturally are, they will be damned to damned to hell just because that's who they are. But those who would have otherwise chosen the goodness of God, but had done evil because of the teachings of their fathers, of their evil fathers, what is their plight? Do they just lose because their fathers taught them to do murder and whoredoms and all these other things? Even though that they were, if you would have put them in a place where they grew up as Latter-day Saints or good Christians, that they would have chosen otherwise. So God knows the dealings with each one of his children, and he's going to deal with us individually, and therefore he's not going to say, you did evil, your heart is evil, your spirit is evil, that's it, I'm done with you. He's going to say, you were this, but this is the reasons why you were this. I think that's my end on that one.
Well, Revelation 21:8, I see those that are unbelievers, abominable, murderers, whoremongers, sorcerers, idolaters, liars. I mean, Many of you would probably say that you are one of those things as a part of your life. And I would say, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9 through 11, if you continue in that lifestyle, continue to look at pornography, continue to be a fornicator, an idolater, then you will have your part in the lake of fire, according to this verse. It's those that are unrepentant, have not repented of these things, have not given up for God, have not received Jesus into their lives and allowed him to cleanse them from all wickedness. But again, the Bible teaches of no second chances, that if you are one of these types of people, then unfortunately you will have your part in the lake of fire. So it's not outer darkness, it's a real lake of fire that we need to be prepared for if we are wicked. So the last thing I want to say is there is only one God. Isaiah chapter 44 says that beside me there is no other God, that he knows of no other God beside him. That's what the Bible teaches. But one of the things that you will learn in the Mormon temples is that the works you will do, you will eventually do them to attain godhood.
Can we leave that debate for next week there, Paul?
We
Since you
can
introduced it?
we can leave that for next week and we can
Yeah.
talk about that then. Do you guys have any concluding thoughts?
Just
I'd love to join for the next debate too.
you're more than welcome. You've been actually I'm exercising my mind right now, Alex. I think you're somebody that I'd like to recruit onto my other station so that because it's boring. Not when Paul's on there, but when I'm on there by myself, it's boring. I've even recruited my boys, so I think you're definitely somebody I'd really love to join the team with. But anyway, yeah. Paul, you agree? Is Alex welcome back next week?
Oh, anybody's welcome back
Yeah,
on
and
this show. And if you know of anybody, Ellicks, that also wants to join in, that sounds terrific too.
I think Robert Boylan still wants to debate you.
I mean, you can just, if you want to just bring him on this show, that's fine. We can all
please
kind of
do. I'll
discuss
debate
together.
Robert Boylan myself. I've got plenty of ammo for everybody. I had my family down in Southern California, LDS through and through. I debated with them for 3 or 4 days. So on a subject. So I've got plenty for everybody. I don't choose my enemies. They choose me.
But I will say I really enjoyed this, guys.
Really have.
Discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellicks, for coming on. Thank you, Arthur. We'll do it again next week. Same time next week.
Absolutely. Alex, is that good with you?